What was Stefan like as a kid?
Tracy, will you go first?
Yeah. So he, as a little boy, he was a really happy little boy. Always really, wasn't he? He was always really happy, and he always looked older than what he was because he was kind of tall and he had this
mature look about him.
Yeah, he did. He always looked older than what he was, and I just remember when he was in about grade 3, I remember saying to the teacher about Stefan in the classroom because nothing fazed him, and I said, I was a little bit concerned, and he said to me, if he can stay that relaxed, he said, that's amazing.
When did you start noticing changes in him?
Yeah, probably 15, and it was really quick.
Yeah.
Other friends were talking about the kids going to parties and being really social, and we didn't have to deal with any of that at that point. Everything was still happy, just hanging with his mates.
Of course, you look at who was he with, were they bad? And unfortunately, parents do that. We like to look at what is creating this. Who do we point the finger at? Who do we say stay away with? And because totally through lack of understanding as a parent, rather than why is this happening? And unfortunately, we're not given a book. When you have kids, you're not told the fact this is from 1 to 5, 5 to 10, 10 to 18. You don't. It's how you try to learn, and unfortunately, you feel like you failed, don't you?
One of my better decisions in my life was to trade a car for a sleeve and another car. And mind you, sleeve that never got finished. Thank you. So the reason I say that is because the next part I'm going to talk about is moving to London. So she got really bad. I moved there when I was 20, but leading up to it, she got terrible. Just smoking ice or speed, eating pills, just cocktail shit every weekend. I remember my girlfriend at the time, she got this epic job working for it's like the PA for the defence, the head of the defence for the Olympics. It was insane. London, whatever year that was there. She was moving. I was all up over it. I was like, I didn't want her to go. I didn't want to be where I was. My life was a mess. I was hyped all the time. Yeah, so I decided 2 weeks before she left to just go. I ended up selling that car, I think for like $400 or $600, and then bought drugs the weekend before to go with, 2 weeks before, and then did a photo shoot the next weekend, got like I think $2,000, bought a ticket to London and was completely high every day leading up to London. Yeah, like came down on the plane and was like, holy fucking shit, you've like, left your apprenticeship, left your job, left your hometown, moved to London with no job, like not really any money at all. What the are you doing? Like, it was insanity. Once I got there, it definitely gave me some time and some space while I was there.
Do you think in those moments where you did something like that, was there actually a part of you or a voice that was asking you those questions? And if there was, what generally was the response?
Like, what are you doing, do you mean?
Yeah. Did you just go, this is who I am, I'll figure it out, or?
It was just like, it was almost like survival mode. It was like, get to the next thing. It was always just get to the next thing, get to the next thing. And I think, like, same deal with like leaving space between groups of people. It was like, I can start fresh when I go here. Nobody knows. Always keep arm's length enough so you know a bunch of this up shit, but you don't know any of the stuff that happened over here. And you don't know the stuff that happened here because that was other people. So it was like always spread out enough so nobody knew everything about me. So that voice, like, what are you doing? It's like, ugh, just go to the next thing. Just get there. I remember going to London, getting there and just having this poetic thought of being like, I'm gonna get really healthy, I'm gonna get really strong, I'm gonna go to the gym, I'm gonna come back and everyone's gonna be like, what the happened to Stefan? How good does he look? Wow, man, you really turned your shit around. Mind you, nobody really knew how bad it was anyway. So it's like, who do you want to say that? Like, who are you looking for that, like, reassurance from?
Was there ever a moment where you thought, this is it, you could lose your son?
Yeah, I remember one place in particular that I had to go and get him from, and I looked around that room and I was scared shitless. So that was a time for me, wow. But I remember one particular time sitting at the front in the car, I've got to go in here. No idea what I was walking into, but you do it. You sort of get to know what's happening in their lives. But with the drug abuse, we didn't know. And that's where it became so bloody difficult because he kept acting normal. But that was the hard part.
Yeah, so London actually, this whole other shit actually happened while I was in London. And so Dad had his own business called Brand Talk. Yeah, got quite the mind for it, has a wealth of experience. So started his own business. Mum and Dad sold the house a few years prior to put all this money into it. And their best friend actually cleaned his bank account out while I was in London. When I was over there, I knew that I went through a lot of financial hardship while I was in London myself, and I knew that I couldn't rely on them to get home because of what they had just gone through. I learnt this really weird thing when I was in London, which I actually forgot about until right now, and it was that you don't really need anything to survive, which was a weird lesson to learn because I shoveled everything into my body that I could find. Drug-wise, food-wise, I was addicted to and everything. Yeah, it was this weird thing to learn where it's like, hey, when you have no money and you can't actually rely on anybody else because they're going through their own shit, what do you actually need to survive? When I got back from London, I came back in really hot because I was like, I felt really good. I was there for just over 6 months. I'd still kept drinking, so there wasn't this big gap, but I hadn't smoked meth. Fantastic. I think I maybe smoked weed once. Again, fantastic. I'd cut down on cigarettes heaps. Then the first weekend I got back, I smoked meth all weekend, and that just started spiraling again. So throughout all of my addiction patterns, movement has always been a huge part of my life. I think this was one of the reasons why, like I talk about all these years taking drugs and this and that, and nobody knew because I looked really healthy. There were time periods where I didn't look as good, but for the better part of it, I looked fit. I went to the gym. I'd stay awake all weekend and then I'd still get up and go to the gym on the Monday. I loved being abnormal in normal situations. The amount of times I've gone to the gym high, it's insane. I'd eat edibles, just go, train just as hard. And I always felt like I had this thing to prove to myself. It's been like, no, I can do it too. There's this really weird train of thought that happens, especially with people around marijuana and also drugs, party recreational drugs. I'm sure you've probably heard your friends say, man, I'm still good. I still go to the gym during the week. I still eat okay on Monday. You know, I haven't left my job yet. It's like, okay, cool, dude. Now, try and live without the drugs on the weekend. Try and stop smoking weed. That's when you realize what's really going on underneath. Do you know what I mean? Mon's nodding, going, yeah, I know what you mean. I was obsessed with that idea of just like hiding in plain sight. It always, weirdly excited me. But
Did you feel like you were just untouchable in those
scenarios?
Yeah,
oath I did.
Like, you know, you keep it, you said before you kept people at arm's length because you just didn't want anyone to get close enough to be able to touch you.
Yeah, no, I did. I felt untouchable. I was like, I can do anything. I really can. Yeah, and that untouchableness, untouchableness, is that a word?
I don't think so. But
that untouchableness, we're going to make it a word, carried on, especially into the next part of my life. Yeah, so everything kept getting more and more, and then we moved into Albert Street. Albert Street, Geelong West, and anybody that came to that house will look at me exactly the same as the way that I'm looking at you right now. So a few things happened. I started on a full-time plumber's wage, which was really good for me. It was 6 figures, which was great. Along with those 6 figures came just as much drug use. So I would, blow every cent on drugs. And Mum, I remember she helped me do my tax and she's like asking how much I earned, and she realised and she's like, Stefan, where the is all your money going? I'm like, I don't know, I just spend it. Realising that now, where I stand now, of course you would and looking at me, that time period is when shit started getting, I didn't look as good. We would stay up for, 3 nights, which would become 4 nights, which would become 5 nights of not sleeping at all. I would see black splotches in my eyesight driving. Absolute insanity. I thought I was going to go blind at one point. I lost a lot of weight. That's when training stopped. I stopped training. And the people who I was around, I remember at one point, I think me and one of my best mates, Abel, we lived together. We were the only two that had jobs. Everybody else just smoked and sold meth, sold pills. I'd have people that would rock up to my house with just cups full of hundreds of pills going, here you go. We had a couple of people overdose at our house. So the first guy, one of my really good friends, he started frothing from the mouth on my couch at like 4 a.m. And he cut.
You know, we were concerned to who he was hanging around with. We were trying to, I guess, guide him, but he was
off on his own tangent.
We went and spoke to people too, just to know how we could support him.
Of course, the other thing which was a real concern to us is with all this happening with Tyson and Maddie, that we tried our best to, I guess, shelter them from it. But it was very hard to shelter them from so much, wasn't it? Because there was so much in their face.
But we didn't do a good job.
Oh, we did a shit job, basically. That was one of the things where you're trying to balance all these balls and you know, we're trying to protect Stefan, but whereas Maddie and Tyson, I remember poor Tyson's face and Maddie's as well, was like they were frightened of what they could see, what was happening around them, and we're trying to solve the problems of all this and fix it, but as parents you don't know how to fix it. And yet you don't know that you feel like, once again I said before, I'm failing. What have we done wrong? So as a parent you feel like you're failed, and then you worry about Maddie and Tyson and what effect it's going to have on them, and you know, you're praying they don't take the same path. It's all these other things happen during that period of time, which is bloody hard.
So yeah, I remember at that time period just having moments of being like, what the are we doing and who the am I hanging around? Like it actually became a point at that period where bad things can happen to you when you hang around the wrong sort of people that are in really deep. I remember going to people's houses. One of my friends owed lots of money and guys coming in with guns and us having to leave. I remember going back and hiding at our house weeks later because one of my other friends had been up for knows how long, and he was afraid these guys were going to come and get him because he had owed money. I remember meeting other friends that were in and out of jail and just laughing about it, trying to get in and out of other gangs and just being like, what am I doing here? I'm just a guy that likes to, and this does not sound good, and I'm not saying this in a playful way, but I was just a guy that liked to get really high because I didn't know myself. Like, what am I doing here? One of my best friends, well, two of them actually overdosed. One overdosed on our couch at like 4 a.m. and he started frothing at the mouth, and everyone was like, we'll be fine, we'll call an ambulance, this and that, and I hadn't slept for I think 3 days. I got everyone to carry him. I went, that he's gonna die, and I got everyone to pick him up and carry him into the car. They put him in the back seat. I drove like 120 through the centre of Geelong. Yeah, he actually died in the back of the car, and I remember dragging his body out of the car and just being like, he's not breathing, he's not alive. He was complete. There's a feeling I will never forget because whole body was completely dead weight. They pumped his stomach, jump-started him and brought him back to life. The doctor actually said afterwards that had I not taken him when we did, he probably wouldn't have made it if we had waited on an ambulance. But for days and days and days and weeks and probably actually years, because that shit doesn't leave for a long time, I didn't feel like I'd done anything good for him. 3 weeks later, one of my other best mates overdosed out the back. He'd taken a lot of GHB before he got into our house. So we called an ambulance this time. Yeah, he went to hospital and I made the decision. I like to stand by this decision, but also at the time maybe shouldn't have decided to go with my other friend to his parents' house to let him know that he was in hospital. I remember my dad was like, the next one's gonna die. I was like, yeah, maybe. I had justified it in my head as being like, well, I'm not putting it in their mouth, but it's like you're opening this space up for people. But after that, I was like, something's got to change. So throughout all this, the years before, I'd been playing music. We had this band called Gusto Gringo, which I played drums in. We were pretty cool. I had fun. We used to just smoke so much weed. So Josh, one of my really good friends, Josh Hoff, him and one of my other really good friends, Moji, or Steve, we all decided to move up to Melbourne. So this was a matter of months after that last overdose. I was already trying to get up to Melbourne anyway. It was a dramatic change because those weeks leading up to leaving, a lot happened. I cut ties with a lot of people when I moved to Melbourne. A lot of people weren't happy that I didn't answer, that I didn't reply, but I actually believe if you're going to stop taking drugs, if you're that far in with something, if you're surrounded by that many people, I don't think you have enough choice. Like, people throw their arms up in the air about rehab, and I never wanted to go to rehab for this feeling of defeat. Yeah, I think if you're gonna get out of this, I know lots of friends, I know people that I know right now are like, oh, you know, all my friends take drugs, I can't cut them out. It's like, you're all not doing something that's very good. Of course you have to cut them out. It's not, if you're putting yourself first, if you are unapologetically, relentlessly trying to find your own peace, you're putting everyone first just by trying to do that. Don't be fooled by a drug addict and drugs in their veins looking at you going, you're leaving me. Of course they're going to say that. They need somebody to make them feel good about it. Like, what else are they going to do? If you go, they're going to be faced with their own shit. I didn't get completely clean when I moved up there, but it was a big pinnacle changing point, getting out of Geelong and moving away. But I started noticing, for anybody that's watching this that smoked meth, it's, I hate it when anybody compares it to other drugs because it's not like other drugs. Some of the decisions and some of the things that I did while I was high, you just completely lose yourself. You can't even see an inkling of yourself, and the problem is it's like 7 days or even 10 days or maybe 2 weeks before you even start to see that guy again. And normally, because you've just smoked it, you don't give yourself that long before you smoke it again. So then you get caught in this trap of being like, I never see the person that I am or the person that I was, to the point where the only person that you know is this guy that's constantly high and coming down, but you don't even realize it. What type of chance do you ever have? I started really noticing those patterns within myself because I was smoking within the months, and I started to actually realize where I talk about this switch that I have in my head, that once it's hit, anything goes. I'll tear my life apart in 24 hours. I think one of the incredible parts about having really up or having really large expansive experiences, whether it be with drugs, whether it be with anything, is that you have the scope to understand how bad something could be all the way over here, but then that gets slingshotted all the way to the other side. So people always saw this really happy version of Stefan where I was like all the way over here, not realizing that it went, look at this arm movement, all the way back over here. I used to always, and I still do, say that people with a mental illness are like magic. You're like a wizard because you get to see how terrible life can be. That's a gift. Like, that's actually a gift. Because within that perspective is the ability to see how good life is, how magical it can be, how incredible it can be. Like, you get that opportunity, and I think that opportunity gets taken away from you when somebody tells you you're broken, or somebody tells you that you need to be fixed, or somebody tells you that you need medication in order to be the person you were born to be. I haven't said this in this video just yet, but I also completely acknowledge and understand that sometimes people push things too far. And there is a place for medication. Like, I get that there's a place for medication. I've seen people in drug-induced psychosis. One of my best friends was in and out of the Swanson Centre in Geelong because of it. Actually, quite a few of my friends were. But I think the problem with this day and age is everyone's so medicated. You get medicated for having a bad day. We're human beings. You want to not have the full scope of your human experience? What the is that? How are you supposed to ever have a good day if you don't have a bad day? And that's where I think everything gets up, because we get told we're having a bad period in our life. We lose our job. Someone up for us at school. But instead of being taught to deal and cope with our emotions and find a deeper understanding of where they live within us and understanding the good side of having a shit day, we get told that we should be changing that emotion and we should be trying to feel good 24/7. What? What do you mean, feel good 24/7? It's why I was a drug addict. It's why I am. It's what I tried to do. It doesn't work any of the way.
What was your biggest fear in the midst of all of this?
I'd say losing him, not only to life, but as a son.
We'd had conversations, but we didn't realise the extent of it.
No, we really had no idea.
You know, we thought we were doing the right thing at the time.
You say the fear, I remember having to go into some situations to basically drag him out of. You think, what the hell is my boy doing here? You look at the other people in those rooms. Just bad memories.
Because then he'd be okay and he'd go to work and we think, oh no, it's okay, he's on track.
But he kept normality. So as far as everyone was concerned, yeah, he'd big night out in the Terps, but it was more than a night out in the Terps. For us, once again, we kept looking for something, didn't we? What can be, you know what I mean? Every time you see a positive, 3 or 4 negatives will come up.
Things continued to change for me because I had taken myself away from Geelong. I put myself in Melbourne. I started to get some purpose with music. I wrote a lot. But for that particular, I laugh when I say this because for that particular band, it was pretty dark. Like a lot of the stuff that I wrote, and it continues to be because that's a beautiful part of life. As I'm saying, you need to be able to have that outlet, and I write a lot of happy songs too. So I eventually left that band. At the same time, I started partying a lot in Melbourne again, and it felt like just party drugs. Everyone, a lot more cocaine and no more meth. But cocaine and pills and more alcohol, and I stopped smoking weed for a little bit, but just partied on weekends and felt like that was somehow better. After that, I started singing a lot more. So I'd sung when I was 14, then not again, through just a self-worth thing, not thinking I was good and couldn't work it out. I tried to scream. Don't try and scream like a metal artist unless you get taught properly, because I cooked my vocal cords terribly. So and then ended up starting this other band called the Velvet Addiction. That was a weird time period for me because a lot of the shit that I had done in the past almost felt glorified. The whole rock and roll, drug addict, sex, drugs and rock and roll thing was very rife. Is rife the word?
She said it's getting old. The same story told.
Very rife, and I think continues to be in a lot of those areas. Not everywhere, and not everyone that I met, but it definitely felt cool. So I started partying a little bit more, and I remember having a complex with it because I would explain what had happened and parts of what had happened to me because that's why I was playing music. I've always felt like, and one of the reasons I've never wanted to talk about everything that's happened to me because I never want to glorify anything. I never want anybody to be like, oh, that sounds cool. Oh, you can find yourself within that. I'm gonna go do it. Because it wasn't cool. And I used to have a real problem with it because I had a lot of friends commit suicide. If they didn't commit suicide, they tried. If they hadn't tried, a lot of them had been in and out of the Swanson Centre, which is a psychiatric ward down in Geelong. Drug-induced psychosis, trying to kill themselves, or just not being able to cope and completely losing the plot. So when certain people started saying, this is cool, that's cool, I was like, it didn't feel very cool when my friend shot himself in the head. It didn't feel very cool when my friend's older brother committed suicide. It didn't feel good going to all those funerals. Why do you think it's cool? I feel horrible still because of it all. So I had this constant complex with that. So although I felt like I was writing, and that band did some cool shit, like we had some fun. We did lots of tours up and down the East Coast. We played a festival over in New Caledonia, which was rad. We released a couple of EPs, we got airplay, which was fun, like people wanted to talk to us, but I always had this thing in the back of my head where it was like, this isn't it. It can't be. This doesn't align with you entirely. I had people within the band telling me they wanted me to reference drugs because it was cool. Like, drugs have me up for a really long time. I don't want to talk about it in that kind of way.
You feel that sense of blame because he would have either not contacted or if he run away. And then when he was home, the guilt and that sense of relief, that, oh my God, he's okay, and then off we go again.
Yeah, towards the end of that band, I actually completely stopped taking drugs. Like, completely stopped taking party drugs, we'll say, and just started smoking a lot of weed. One of the main reasons why I stopped taking a lot of drugs was I've accidentally played high once. I've never played a gig intentionally on drugs, ever. One gig in Byron Bay, this was actually the last tour we went on with my best friend Matt. So at the start of all the sets, we used to have this really cool intro where it was like the drums, and I played tambourine. I used to do this huge scream at the start. I was like, and Ava was there and Matt was there. They'd been up this bit. I got off stage and I thought you were going to pass out because I went down on my knees as I was screaming. I just remember I could feel all the sweat out of every pore dripping out of my body. The reason I'm saying this and over-exaggerating the not taking drugs on stage because it was the first time in my life that I had ever found something that I didn't want to do high. I would do anything and everything on drugs. And then I found this thing, singing, writing, performing. I was like, I'm actually not as good if I'm intoxicated. So here's the other part of addiction that I think is really important. Finding something you believe in and care about, and finding value within that for yourself.
Saw you left the other day. You couldn't find another way. It hurts, yeah, it hurts to find an answer. And all the people that you know love to see you sad and lonely.
Because I think without that, I tried every other way. I tried for other people. I thought I tried for myself. I tried for my family. I tried for my job. None of it made sense to me because I couldn't see the actual value in stopping. But when you find something that is really true to you, that you really believe in, that you really care about, you'll fucking stop for it.
With a heart like an ocean, how can't you swim? With your eyes inside of me, which way will you begin? 'Cause I've been running through the city streets, and if you can't find me, I won't believe it.
It might not, like, you might be a musician, it might not be music. It might be something else. It might be, I don't know, it's gonna be different for everyone, but that was the one thing that worked. Yeah, that was the last story we went on with Matt, because then by the next one, he had committed suicide. So I moved to Geelong and we were hanging out heaps. Like, he would come up to gigs again, he was set to come on the next tour with us. Yeah, he wasn't good. He wasn't in a good way at all. He was in a drug-induced psychosis for a long time too. But I think what happens is you get in your own little bubble with it and it becomes your ultimate truth. Ice is this thing it does, it becomes your truth. Because you have no reference point to anything else. I know it was my truth for a long time. I honestly believed that I was better when I smoked meth. Yeah, I remember the last few weeks as I saw him decline. I spoke with his family very closely. He tried once around 4 years earlier. And again, I think before that. But the one 4 years earlier, I'd actually ended up driving right up the East Coast with him. We went on a big road trip together, scared every single night that I would wake up and he wouldn't be there. Yeah, the last few months it was really hard because I was like, I don't know how to help. It was the first time in my life where I was close to a decline. I'd been close to declines before, but I could see the end. Everything towards the end just didn't seem to make a difference. Yeah, so it was the first time I'd been completely lost with actually not knowing how to help someone. He didn't know what to do. He didn't know where to go. And yeah, the week before, we just played a gig and he called me and I let our guitarist answer the phone. And it was the last time I would have spoken to him. So in the following weekend, he gassed himself in his car. I found out the next morning his dad called me. I got really angry at everyone. I just felt like everyone could have done a little more, but no one could have. I went completely sober for 4 months after that, but it was like the most anxious time in my life. Holy shit. I think there's an ebb and flow about just starting and stopping that we as humans are going to have regardless, whether it's training, whether it's eating well, whether it's stopping any sort of addiction, you're always going to fall back off. But if you have a shit intention, when you fall off, you just blow out, right? I didn't deal with that. I still didn't deal with that and blamed myself for a really long time. Yeah, he was like the one person that kind of knew everything about me. I know I said I had lots of groups of friends, but he was the one guy who knew everything. And when he died, I was like, well, I'm not ready to tell everyone anything. It was just really weird for me because I'd been through other things with friends in the past, with addiction and being there for other people and being there through thoughts of suicide for other people and watching them nearly do it. But with him and just seeing it, it was like this defeat for me or something. I know you can't change everyone. I never thought that you could change or help everyone. I know that people have to help themselves. I understand that. It just sucks when it's someone you love.